stream going. Okay. There we go. All right. We'll give it a second, give folks a chance to get in the word, get in the room. We're starting a little bit late tonight. As I was sharing with my brother, had opportunity today to get the first vaccine, vaccine shot. I wasn't feeling bad, but wasn't feeling great. And, so we're starting a little late. We won't be on long tonight. And as you can see, I have my friend and my brother, colleague, fellow proclaimer of the gospel on with me tonight. We're going to deviate from what has been our study for the past few weeks, understanding your Bible. And instead just having a quick conversation about some of the things that have been happening in our community here as of late. For any of you, excuse me, I'm multitasking here while I'm talking to you. I'm getting my on my page and starting a watch party. But for any of you that have been paying attention to current events and especially local events, you know that there has been just some alarming violence in our community. And we have seen it sort of culminate with several shootings here in the last few days, one of which unfortunately involved a young mother who was not even the intended target, was sitting in the car with her two babies. I believe the one child that was in her lap was 1 year old. And the little baby that was sitting in the bag, I don't think she was much older than that. I think she may have been maybe 2 or 3 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so just tonight, just want to have a conversation about this. I've been doing a lot of internal processing around some of the things that have been happening. And wanted to get on tonight with my friend and my brother. We've had some great conversations over the years, just about faith and community, theology and philosophy. And he's always got a great, Lord has blessed him with a great mind, is very insightful, and the life experience that the Lord has blessed him to have also gives him some unique insights to some of the things that we, are navigating in this season. And so, most of you, especially our New Hope family, you know him, but for any that maybe don't know him that are tuning in tonight, just introduce yourself real quick, bro.
I am Minister Hall. Been a member of our New Hope Missionary Baptist Church for a very significant period of time. And so have thoroughly enjoyed my time there, thoroughly enjoyed my relationship with the church, also with Carlos Sr., Pastor Sr. I met my wife in New Hope, and she is also an active member as well. And also I happen to be, in terms of my job duties, I'm a deputy at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. That's what I do to kind of make my money. And do ministry as the opportunity presents itself. So, of course, I'm not speaking on behalf of the sheriff's office, but that is what I do, and a job that I thoroughly enjoy, and like I say, presents very unique opportunities, and I think gives a very unique perspective as it relates to this topic that we're about to speak on for the next few minutes.
So for those of you that are joining us either via YouTube, our YouTube channel, or our Facebook page, feel free, if you have questions as this conversation is transpiring, feel free to type your questions into the comments section. If there are things that you'd like to add, of course, in all things we want to be respectful. And do understand that neither of us are claiming to have all the answers. when it comes to violence, I believe it is a multifaceted kind of set of circumstances that contributes to each of the situations that we have seen happen, right? And so even in the way that we look at this, there's a historical view that we can take just in terms of some things that have happened in our community in the last 200 years, even the last 50 years. There's a theological perspective. There's a sociological perspective. There's psychological perspective. A number of ways that we can approach this. But tonight we just want to have just a conversation, and we want to invite you to be a part of that. And so bruh, we were kind of talking before we got on just about just how these things, this violence, these shootings in particular have been happening so quickly. It's hard to even keep track of and keep have an idea of what's going on. We were talking to you, were mentioning to me that they apprehended one young man, and we were kind of figuring out which shooting he was related to and that type of thing. And so from your perspective, man, as you've been processing this, what have been some of your initial thoughts, your initial feelings?
Some of my initial thoughts was just sheer sadness. It's sad, and I think about not only the individual who committed the crime, and also I think about, of course, the victim, and then I think about the victims' families. So basically, you have three, and even the family of the individual who perpetrated the crime. So I mean, you have tons of individuals whose lives will forever be affected by this tragedy. Many times when I see these guys, coming to the jail, and I start, looking up, what they're coming to the jail for, my heart just bleeds and breaks, and but I also, try to assess it from a spiritual standpoint, and just try to think about, what's going on in the heart and the mind of someone who can just has so little value for not only their lives, but the life of other individuals. I think before we got on the line, we were talking about just a point where we could potentially maybe start a conversation with those in the street. It's just what it means to have some kind of value for human life, the sanctity of human life, and so I think about that, and and also processing, and praying for potentially the families of victims, and what they must be going through, and also I think I don't know if the church could possibly maybe reach out to the family of the young lady who lost life, just to wish our condolences, just to be a touch on somebody's shoulder, whisper some words of encouragement, because that can be an excellent opportunity to perform ministry, or just to show some people that you care. So I think about all of that when I'm trying to process, of course, how, Lord, what is your response? How would you have us to respond in times like these? Because I think it's in a city of safety. It's almost like this thing comes in cycles. These killings and these shootings. You'll have a situation like this week, where several individuals have been killed within the past 5 to 10 days, and then it'll kind of die down maybe for a month or two, or maybe longer, and then it'll ramp itself up again, and then just another wave and round of shootings and killings in the area. And so I'm like you, asking myself, okay, what I'm trying to process through scripture first. What is the mind of God? Seeking through prayer. Okay, Lord, what's hard? How are you feeling about what's going on, and how can the church respond in times like these?
Yeah, I was jotting down some things as you were talking, man, because you touched on so many things that that I think are really important for the community to really talk about in this moment. And one was just the trauma. The sort of ripple effect that a traumatic event like this has for multiple members of the community. It's not just this violent act doesn't just impact, as you were saying, the victim, nor does it just impact the person who perpetrated the crime, but it also then touches their families. And then when you live in a community as big, small as St. Petersburg is, right? Like, because we're really, technically, we're not a small city. We're like the fourth largest city in the fourth largest state in the country. So we're not really a small city, but at the same time, we're just big enough to be small. You know what I'm saying? Where everybody, there's 5 to 6 degrees of separation. Yeah. And Dr. Wayne Thompson would often say to us younger pastors, you throw one rock in this city and you're gonna hit 7 or 8 people. Yeah. And so that trauma. So when you have a situation where this young man has now taken this young lady's life, it is a given that not only has his family and her family has been impacted, but it's a given that even if you didn't know the young man or know the young lady, you know somebody that knows them.
Yeah,
it's a given. It's a given. And I saw so many of kids that are either affiliated with New Hope or are friends with kids from New Hope, or members of our church or whatever, that were expressing their hurt and their anguish at the passing of this young lady. It made it, like you said, it made me really, really sad just about the intense grief that this type of traumatic situation exposes a new generation of young people to. And then the other thing that you mentioned too, and so the community, having more of that conversation. And how do we bring our young people into that dialogue so that they have maybe more of an appreciation of how connected we all really are in this city. I often hear people talk about how it used to be back in the day, where everybody knew one another and that type of thing, and you knew your neighbors. And now with, people are so transient, and no, people don't have the same phone number for more than a couple months at a time, much less necessarily being in the same neighborhood. But how do we get back to knowing one another, or at least knowing about the knowing, and understanding the kind of impact that your decision has on people that are a lot closer to you than maybe you realize. And then the other thing that you said was this piece about the sanctity of human life. And that's where my next question comes from is, and we talked about this a little bit off camera, but how do we get this generation of young people, and especially young men? Because if we're being all the way real, we talk about these violent crimes. It's mostly being perpetrated by young men, that look like you, that look like us, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so how do we get these young men to buy into, or to acknowledge at a level that has real impact, that all life has human value. How do we find, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the Black Lives Matter song.
That I'm black, right, because I hear people say, right, because I hear people say, well, where's the church? Like, where's the church? We need the church to be vocal, right? And the church brings a certain particular, we should anyway, bring a particular theological viewpoint to that, right? Like, we believe, for example, in the Imago Dei, right, that all of us are created in the image of God. And so because you are an image bearer, then you are worthy of respect and honor, right? Because you are in the image of God. And for me to attack you is to attack the image of God, right? Yeah. And so we stand on that, and to take it even further, if you are also a Christian, then and really and technically, even if you're not a Christian, but then when you also add our Christological perspective, we recognize that you already died for a person, right? That God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, right? And then Paul has a whole theology of sociology just built on that premise of how we should treat one another with love and tenderness, just because of the fact that God loved you so much that he sent his son to die for you. So how, so how do we, but then how do we, so that's where we're coming from. But increasingly, a number of folks in our community don't necessarily share that worldview. So how do we bridge that gap, at least philosophically, if not theologically?
Yeah, I found, and like I said, just because of the nature of what I do, and I have an opportunity to kind of get up close and personal with these some of these not just young but older gentlemen as well, just by working in the jail. I try to just start with just with where they are, and acknowledge, number one, first of all, I think we have to acknowledge what has happened, family of origin, kind of the environment that some of these young men have grown up in, that has kind of strongly contributed to the person that they are right now. Because if one of the things that blessed me about transitioning to becoming a deputy and working in this environment is that behind everybody that comes into the jail for the whatever reason they come into, I found, and it really helped me to be less judgmental. There's a story behind what I see going on before me right now. There's a backstory behind this particular individual. Yes, they did this, that, and the other. But if you start, just having a conversation with them and just start kind of digging into their past, they begin to unearth all kinds of just mental, emotional trauma, abuse, drug addiction, alcohol, just the lack of any kind of parental involvement on a significant level. Not speaking about everybody that go to jail, but many persons. When you start having these conversations, so the first thing that you have to do, is to acknowledge that what has been done to you, what you have experienced, what you have encountered in your early life, like that stuff was real. And yes, it contributed. No, it does not excuse your behavior. It does not at all excuse your behavior. But one does have to acknowledge that hurt was real, that trauma was real, and that it has played a role in getting you to this place, or kind of shaping the person that you have become, that made you do what it is that you did, that put you in this particular situation where you landed up in jail. So I think that's the first thing. Acknowledge that pain, that hurt, that trauma. But at the same time, start kind of what were you thinking? What process? What was going through your head that made you feel like doing this was all right? Like on one level, I'm kind of repelled, and it just at the thought of somebody taking somebody's life just so senselessly. But at the same time, I'm somewhat, just as a someone who's been trained in a little bit of counseling, have a degree in counseling, like you would love to, on some level, to have a conversation with this individual, just to kind of unpack, okay, what was going on in your mind that made you feel like it was all right to do what it is you did in the taking of somebody else's life. I mean, I'm curious. And then, kind of starting at that place, if one had that kind of opportunity, but if not, just having some conversation with the people out here in these streets, still following that kind of, train of thought, but then at the same time or whatever, after getting some of those answers, allowed that to set the stage for an opportunity to present, the gospel and Jesus, and how literally he came from heaven to earth on a rescue mission to I mean, because just what's going on out here in these streets, like it highlights the fact of whatever that our world is broken, our communities are broken, and just the what has been offered up many times as a remedy for these hurts and hangups and trauma, it hasn't worked, and even the church included. But at the same time, we don't judge a thing based on how its abuses, but how its founder. Let's go back to the scriptures and see what God originally intended for humanity. How did God create us to work and live and function as human beings? And then how getting away from that has contributed to all the hell that's breaking loose, and what God has done through Jesus to kind of remedy all of that, to save and sanctify and change us, so that we can then in turn begin to change and transform the communities in which we live. So that I would say kind of that 1, 2, 3 process, if I call it that, is kind of what my approach would be if I was having a conversation with some various individuals.
That's good, man. That's good, and I especially love how when you came full circle and you talked about like you introduced. Not only did you talk about the role that the gospel plays in this, but also sort of the apologetic that we need to include with that conversation, because one of the things you talked about is like that family of origins that has contributed, like sometimes killers are not born, they're made. And so we talk about that family of origins and how it contributes, whether it be abandonment, trauma, abuse, addiction, some of the things that you named, how those things contribute to the emotional well-being, the disposition of our young people's souls as they enter into community, and how we have to be real about that, and to take it a step further, to be willing to admit, even as elders in the community, when a particular approach maybe isn't the best and it hasn't worked. Yeah. And so I'll give you an example, and I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna get ready to shut this down because it's gonna be controversial. I maybe get some people to say something in the comments, but like when I heard you talking about abuse and trauma and etc., man, the first place my mind went, and I'm not picking on Kurt, but the first place my mind went was the situation with Kurt Franklin and his son, right? Yeah. And listen, there's no such thing as the only person who's good is God. That's what Jesus said, right? There's no such thing as a perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect parent, right? Yeah. A long time ago, somebody said to me, every parent casts shadows and light. Right. There's some things that a parent gets right. There's some things that a parent gets wrong. But where I think we're going to find ourselves continuing to be in trouble with the way that our kids see themselves and the way that they see others. Yeah. Is when we continue to co-sign and normalize what is abusive, demeaning, dehumanizing language. Like, like when we're referencing one another as being a B a Negro, you know what I mean? You know, ninja, you know,
Yeah,
being a ninja, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and saying the most foul and ugly things to our kids. And then you got folks in the church who say, when you say, hey man, that's not how we want to talk to our children.
yeah,
Kirk was right to apologize, and you got there go them super saints, like just acknowledging that a particular approach, isn't right. That
yeah,
somehow makes you a super saint. But what to me was funny though is if it were a sin that bothered you, you would
yeah,
address it, you would speak to it, and that would
yeah.
make you a super saint, right? That just make you, somebody who love the community and want to see the community advance.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
when it's behavior that you are okay with, that you find acceptable, and then if somebody addresses it, well then then we want to have these ad hominem kind of arguments and red herrings and and changing the subject and all of that. But
Yeah,
but you can't have, like, to me, you can't have a serious conversation about what's going on with our young people if we're not going to have a conversation with, well, why do they, when we talk about valuing life, well, why do they have such a low opinion of each other? Well,
yes,
that begins with your thought life. Well,
yes,
where does that originate from? Well, that begins with what you're hearing every day. If
exactly.
somebody is calling you out your name, or and calling other people that look like you out their name, and it is called, somebody need to look it up, dehumanize. When we
Yeah,
dehumanize one another, it makes it easier for us to treat one another, as subhuman, as
yeah.
less than human. When you use
Let me give
language
you
and phrasing.
let me give you an illustration of that. Going back to my job. I remember one particular. This was about a year and a half ago. Um, I had to basically sit on an individual and make sure and just watch them. They were on one side of a door, and my responsibility was to make sure that they ain't hurting themselves. Make sure that they don't do any self harm. And so that's one of the most boringest posts that you could be assigned to. Where your job is to just simply watch an individual and make sure they ain't hurting themselves. It's important, but it can be boring at the same time, especially if they ain't doing anything. So while I'm watching one person, I started a conversation with another individual who was in a cell. And I remember I was thinking to myself, it's gonna be a long night, so I ain't got nobody else to talk to, so I might as well talk to this dude over here. And so I asked him, I said, how did you get it? How did you get here? How did you not necessarily what did you do to get here in this particular situation? What crime you committed, but kind of what started you down this road? And I remember he said something that I'll never forget. He said that growing up with his father, he said over and over again, his father would tell him, well, you ain't gonna be, ish, you ain't ish, and you ain't never gonna be nothing. And he said over and over and over again, his father, would say that to him. And he said after a certain period of time, okay, he felt like, okay, his daddy, kept reinforcing that particular, narrative on him. He said instead of it gave him something to, as I would put it, live down to. He started living down to what his daddy, was continually and constantly saying and speaking over his life. And ultimately it led him down a road of just bad choices, poor decisions, drug addiction, that landed him, in and out of jail, and just a wrecked life at a young age. And like I said, and it highlights literally what you just, I pointed out, that dehumanization. This young man from a child had, up under this literally, you have no value. You are nothing. You should look forward to nothing. And this man, believed that internalized that, and ultimately, it just led to him the systematic wrecking of his life. And so yeah, like I said, that literally highlights and illustrates greatly what the point that you just made.
Yeah. I mean, it's just listening to you recount that story, man. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking, and and it makes you wonder how many people have that same sort of testimony. Where like when we talk about we want our kids to love and value themselves. We want them to love and value others, and we talk about and love and value life. And that has to be communicated not only through words, like what we say out and about in the community. When we got a camera in front of us, we're in front of a crowd, but it's also how we treat our children behind the scenes. You show regard through love and care. And when we're willing to be rough with our kids, say things to our kids that we wouldn't want any other grown person to say to us,
Yes,
and if, when you're using words with your children that you'll be fighting mad about if somebody directed those words at you, that ought to let you know that there's a certain level of inappropriateness with maybe what you're saying, and the reality is this, right? Watch this. And nobody is an A+ parent every day. I'm not an A+ parent every day. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I ain't trying to pretend like a C+ day. You know what I'm saying? Is an A+ day. Like I'm not changing the standard just because today it's hard for me to make that A, or and that kind of worries me, that. And not so much that comes from the culture, but to see the saints, to see so many of the saints co-sign and say, like, even when Kirk himself is coming out and saying, yo, that ain't the way I really want to be handling my stuff. That's not how I want to handle my business. I apologize. The man, he's saying it, right? And really, and how many of us haven't been in that situation where you said some things and did some things, but anyway, sometimes kids can have the best life and still make bad choices. Now that's we got a comment in the comment section. Sometimes kids can have the best life and still make bad choices. Now that's true. Now
that is true.
That's true.
Definitely.
That's true. But then the only thing that I would say, but the only thing I would say is, but we don't make a rule based on the exception.
Yeah.
So like when the scriptures say train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they get older, they won't depart from it. Laying that foundation, 9 times, I won't get into statistics, but I just say more often than not, if you are handling what you need to handle as a parent,
yes,
right, you're being present, you're being supportive. You're understanding what your kids need at each stage of their development, and you're doing the best you can at each of those stages to contribute to their growth. When you're dealing with your own issues and you're not depending on your children to kind of be your best little buddy, or be your therapist, or be your road dog, but you're allowing your children to be children. And then you're going, and whatever issues or challenges you have, you're going into, you're going to, whether it's therapy, sitting down with your pastor, being a part of a support group, but you're doing what you need to do to be the best version of yourself. So when you show up, you can show up the way you need to show up for your kids. I think a lot of that goes a long way to getting the kind of outcomes that we want to. But to Rochelle's point, you can do all of that.
Yeah, and still have a knucklehead on your hand.
And still,
more,
but I would say still more frequently than not. If we're laying the foundation, and you know, because there's no shortcut to this,
Yeah.
you know. And so like with your kids, like sometimes what I see anyway is I just see folks that have been either taught or they believe that there's a shortcut to raising their kids. And so rather than spending the kind of time you need to answer their questions, to teach them, to train them, instead using spanking and yelling and screaming and demeaning as a way of getting kids to do what you want them to do, as opposed to helping them to understand the whys behind the doing. You know, and then modeling the behavior you want to see. You know, I mean, these kids ain't just being shuttled in from some other planet and then dropped off into the community. Like they're our kids and we're raising them. And and we've really got to ask ourselves some tough questions to me about are we getting the outcomes that we want to see? You know, so listen, we've been on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say, and speaking of children, I'm babysitting my God,
we've been on for a minute, so we're gonna go and sit it down.
I got to go tend to her, and wife just walked in the door. So
listen, and some of y'all might be. Some of y'all might hear my baby in the background. It's 9 o'clock at night. She's trying to go to the park. So a spring break start tomorrow, you know. So I totally, So listen, but thanks, man. I always enjoy chopping it up. If I'm feeling up to it, I may jump back on here tomorrow with Dr. Brittany Peters and chop it up some more. And if you're free, man, and want to get back on again, we will be glad to have you. But love you, man. I love to Trina, man, and the rest of the family, and we'll be catching up soon.
All right, have a good one.
All right, you too. Thanks to everyone that joined us tonight. We appreciate you. If you have additional questions or comments, feel free to email me, or I'll come back and check the comments in the comments section later. And like I said, we don't have all the answers. I'm hoping that this will be a continuing dialogue. We want to continue to do the work that God has called us to do to support children and families. Praying for all of those involved in these recent tragedies. It's just something that's heartbreaking. It's devastating to all of us, and so we're continuing to pray. If you or someone has been impacted by this and are in need of services, feel free to reach out to us. Also, there are a number of great agencies in the community that you can reach out to that would be glad to serve your family and in whatever way you're needing. One such organization is the Well for Life on 22nd Street South and about 9th Avenue. They've got a great team of folks over there. And so if you or anyone has been impacted by the events of the last few weeks or even this year, please reach out, get the help you need. No man or woman is an island. We all are connected to one another, and we have to do the best we can to look out for each other's best good. All right. Y'all have a good night. The Lord be with you.